Welcome to the Vine Resources podcast show. Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources podcast show. Today I'm joined by Josh Marsh. Josh is the co-founder and CEO of Conversocial over in New York. Josh, thank you so much for joining me on the line today.
No problem. Really great to be on.
And look, obviously it's nice to talk to a fellow Brit making amazing progress for the business out in the USA. I know you've got the UK hub as well. Could you just give our listeners a little bit of a background about yourself and the company, please?
Sure. So I've been in the social media world for quite a long time. My previous company, iPlatform, was one of the first ever Facebook app development agencies in the world. We were actually based in London, building Facebook apps for big brands in 2007, 2008. And I pretty quickly came to the conclusion or the realization that kind of the whole Facebook app side of things was really going to be a bit of a fad. But there was this huge shift happening in just how people were communicating. And that shift in communication was really at the heart of the changes that were happening with social media. People were moving away from kind of more traditional live phone conversations and into kind of asynchronous messaging with the public and private, on their smartphones, in social media, then in messaging. And I really believed that was going to fundamentally transform how businesses would have to communicate to their customers. And as I kind of spent more and more time on that, I realized that as this happened, it was going to really transform how companies would have to deliver customer service. And so Conversocial started initially with this mission to kind of bridge the gap between the rapidly shifting world of social media on the one hand and the needs of the large enterprise contact center on the other hand. And for the first few years, that was very much like our focus and what we did. Over the last year and a half, 2 years, the market started to shift again because of this huge rise in messaging, right? Where consumer behavior with communication has really switched pretty whole scale into mobile messaging, Facebook Messenger, Twitter DMs, WhatsApp. And especially over the last year, these have started to become huge channels for how people communicate with businesses. And for our clients, we saw a year ago, 18 months ago, public social media was the kind of biggest driver of volume. Last September, that switched, where private messaging overtook public and then really quickly accelerated until now it makes up kind of twice the volume. And so messaging is starting to become a really big customer service channel. And our role in that is to help major retailers, telcos, airlines invest into messaging as a care channel. We help them with strategy and guidance, but more importantly, the actual platform that their customer service agents are using handles the workflow, the routing, case management, all of the analytics they need on top of it, so that they can really invest into messaging as a large-scale customer service channel.
Fantastic. I mean, there's so much in there, and as you say, things are changing so fast. So it's great to hear how you're adapting, to support your customers' needs as well in their business. What does a typical day look like for you then? I'd love to know and find out what that looks like.
Yeah, they're rarely a typical day for me. While I'm based in New York, as you said, I do travel a lot. We still have a big office in London where most of our R&D team is. I'm in San Francisco a lot, where we also have really big partners like Facebook and clients like Google, and then a variety of other cities around the US for sales, clients, conferences. And so my schedule varies a lot. So when I'm in the office in New York, I tend to be pretty booked out pretty solidly in back-to-back meetings and calls from 9 in the morning, sometimes earlier with the London to 6 p.m. or later, catching up with all the different parts of the business. Then when I'm traveling, I try and make the most of long taxi rides for phone calls and pockets of time between meetings to catch up on emails. I will say one big exception to that kind of hectic back and forth schedule and kind of jamming in meetings when I'm in the office and then doing what I can when I'm out the office is that last year I actually wrote a book which was just released like a month ago called Message Me, all about the future of customer service in the era of social messaging and AI. And it was a really interesting process for me writing that, because writing long pieces of content, very different to my normal schedule, right? Of like meetings and emails and jotting these short things across. So for a few months, when I was really in the middle of that, I was blocking out 4 hours, 3 to 4 times a week, probably one of those at the weekend, to just sit and write without distractions. So that was a very different experience, but certainly one that I enjoyed a lot.
Fantastic. And by the way, great to hear that you had the time, you made the time, and you had the discipline to put that time in to make that happen, with everything else that you do in your business as well. Josh, who perhaps has had an impact on you as a leader? Perhaps someone who's been a mentor to you, or perhaps even still is. And how have they impacted your business or your life so far?
Yeah, honestly, I've had a lot of different mentors over the years, and have learned a tremendous amount from all of them. I don't, I think it's pretty rare that you have kind of one mentor that kind of does everything. You know what I mean? You have different mentors, and they play different roles, and teach you a lot about certain things. I will say that our chairman, Mike Hedger, has definitely been one of the biggest mentors for me over the years. He joined when we first raised money, and really helped me grow from having a small team of, at the time, kind of 5, 6 people when we first started, uh, you know, joining one of our first investors, and he helped me kind of take on investors, understand how to manage a board, hire senior execs, and he's made a really really big impact. I think especially on helping me learn how to manage investors and manage a board, which is not something that I knew 6, 7 years ago.
What do as your company is growing, and obviously you've got a global operation now. Uh, what what are the challenges you have around employee engagement, and what do you do from the top to keep your people engaged?
Yeah, culture is really important to me, and I think that it's essential for every kind of leader and exec in the business to be actively involved in helping to set and manage culture. But I think that you see a lot of startups, especially, kind of, I think, get a bit confused, where they think that culture is about free lunches and perks and games and t-shirts. Those things are great, but in the end, they're not really culture. And I think that the most important thing is that everyone on the team, every employee, has got real clarity on their role and their responsibilities, and that they understand how to be successful. And I think that as a startup grows and new people join, and the team dynamics change, it's really easy for some of those things to become kind of a bit fudged. Especially if a team goes from one person to 2 people. Who's more senior? Who makes the final decision on things? Which process do you follow? And I think that if you don't address those kind of questions really clearly and really quickly, it can lead to confusion and political behavior. That's just the way that it's kind of human nature. So I think preventing that is definitely one of my number one goals. Trying to figure out where those potential areas of confusion or lack of clarity are, and fixing them. And then personally, I also try and spend time one on one with everyone in the business at different times. Just sit down and take the time to really listen, ask them, take suggestions on what we could be doing better, or things we shouldn't be doing. I think those kind of conversations make a really big difference.
What are you sort of seeing in the market right now as the biggest challenge facing business leaders today?
Obviously, every business is unique, right? But one thing I think is pretty consistent today is that younger employees, people going into the workforce for the first time over the past 3 to 5 years, I think generally have got really high expectations on how quickly they can develop and be promoted. And obviously the great thing about startup as you're growing is often there are opportunities to do that kind of thing, but rapid promotion is not always possible for everyone, right? It just can't be. And so I think it's really essential that leaders and businesses today provide other ways and structured ways for teams and individuals to really grow. In terms of continuous training, development, certifications. I think people just expect that, and they're not willing to just kind of toil away for years to like slowly work their way up the ladder, which may have been more normal a few decades ago. And so I think if you're not really on top of that, you can quickly create some dissatisfied employees.
What if I don't know if you've had this before, but is there a piece of business advice you could share with us that you've had in the past that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, one that I often think about and keep coming back to is a piece of advice that I actually got from a very successful entrepreneur who was kind of a family friend quite a long time ago when I was really just starting out. And he said that to be successful in business, you really have to make decisions pretty coldly, right? You have to kind of make the right logical business decision, without getting emotional about it. But how you carry out those decisions should be as human as possible, right? Just because you made a difficult decision and maybe you need to let someone go or you need to promote someone over someone else or whatever it is, it doesn't mean you should be an asshole in how you carry it out. There's never a reason not to be like nice and humane and really think about how you can do stuff in the best way possible. And I've always kind of kept that with me. Always make the best decision and the right decision for the business, but be as nice and human as possible in how I communicate that decision.
Now, Josh, you mentioned a little bit earlier about how important building the right culture was. So, how do you help new employees when they start into the business understand the culture of the company?
Yeah. So I think what we do have all of our values written down. We're actually kind of going through a process at the moment, kind of really thinking about do we need to change those or update those and make sure they're always relevant. Values and for us is a kind of living topic, right? Constantly thinking about how we need to update them and making sure that they're real and measurable and real things that people can kind of identify about how they behave. So part of it is doing that work, but I also think it's really important just to spend time with people in the business, so they really, especially when people start. So I take all new employees through like an hour-long history of Conversocial presentation where I talk through the development of the business and the evolution of the market, how we've grown and changed as a business, and I make sure to spend time with all new starters, just sitting down one-to-one, having in-depth discussions about how we work and how to be successful at the company. And I think it's through a mix of those things that you really get culture across to a new starter.
What is the one mistake that you've witnessed business leaders making more frequently than others?
I think it's what I mentioned earlier, which is I think kind of getting confused about what culture is, right, and kind of really focusing on cool t-shirts and Friday drinks and doing kind of fun stuff while failing to make the really hard decisions about clear responsibility within the business, or clear accountability. And I think it's those things that really drive whether someone is actually enjoying their job and enjoying their work and is motivated to work hard and be successful. Everything else is kind of it's a nice to have, but it's meaningless if you don't have that at the core.
How are you seeing your industry changing then in the next couple of years? And the second part of that is how do you perhaps also see it affecting your ability to attract and retain the right talent?
I think the big thing in our industry over the next few years is really around AI and automation. And that's really being enabled by the growth of private messaging, where for various reasons, and I talk about this a lot in the book, it's much easier to combine AI and human agents in the same messaging conversation than it is with any other service channel. On the phone, obviously it's really hard to automate anything on the phone apart from a pretty painful IVR process. In the live chat world, it's kind of fully real time. So if you try and have a bot, then the bot's got to be pretty great, or at some point it's going to be a painful handoff to a human agent. But in the messaging world, it's kind of like texting a friend, and that means that 10 minutes is actually pretty real time response time. And so consumer can message in, you can have a bot that can respond, consumer can message again, and a human could respond 10 minutes later. Completely seamless experience from the consumer perspective. So that allows us to implement significantly more automation without damaging the customer experience. And And I really think that the combination of AI and messaging together is going to really transform customer service over the next 3 to 5 years. I think we're going to see a big shift away from the phone and into messaging. So that's a really, really big one. Now, obviously, AI is transforming everything in the tech world. And great data scientists and data engineers are already in high demand, and I think that's going to keep getting worse. Every company is going to need to be putting AI at the heart of everything they do. So that's something that I think every company will be grappling with over the next few years.
What about if you perhaps were having your time again, starting out again, or perhaps looking back at your 20-year-old self? What's the one bit of advice now in hindsight you'd perhaps give to yourself?
It's an interesting one. I think it would be to listen more to the market, understand the real problems that people and companies have today, and figure out how to solve those. My tendency is to always be thinking about the future and thinking about how things are going to be changing in the next 3 to 5 years, and kind of really focused on that. And I kind of, so I've often been pretty early in the market, which in some ways is good. But we now, luckily now at our scale, we have an amazing product team who really drill deep and understand what are the problems that our customers have, and build amazing solutions to fix it. While I kind of dream about the future a bit more. But I think in the early days, and when I was first starting the company and some of my other organizations, I was always very focused on where things were going, and probably not focused enough on what are the problems that we can solve today, just to get to make sure we're winning this customer right now, not the customer next year.
And what, Josh, and thanks for sharing that, by the way. And I was just going to say, from the book, for example, and you mentioned it earlier, Message Me, which you wrote. If there was one thing in the book that's the most important thing for people to remember, what would it be?
I think it's that messaging, social messaging, is really a more powerful customer service channel than anything else that exists today. Right? Brands have been kind of frustrated with customer service for quite a while, because they're constantly trying to balance between delivering a better experience to their customers, but also trying to reduce how much they're spending, because it's just so expensive. And in most customer service channels, those two goals conflict with each other. You can deliver an incredible customer service experience if, whenever someone phoned, 5 seconds later with no rings, the same person you spoke to last week is there waiting for you on the phone. Like a personal concierge 24 hours a day. That would be amazing, but it would also be like unbelievably expensive to do. And anything you do to try and reduce the cost tends to just create a worse and worse experience. The great thing about messaging is that consumers love it. Super convenient, super easy to be able to just message a brand off your phone and get a response in 5 to 10 minutes later. But that asynchronous workflow and the ability to layer in automation means that it's also actually more efficient than pretty much any of the other service channels. So that's super exciting, and I think there's a really big opportunity for businesses to shift customer service volume away from traditional channels and into messaging with really massive improvements to their customer satisfaction and customer service efficiency as a result.
Fantastic, and it's really exciting to hear the growth plans of your business, and I'm really excited for you guys there. Josh, what's the best way for people if they want to find out about you, find out about the company, and connect with you?
Probably the easiest way is over Twitter. I'm just at Joshua March, MLCH. Feel free to mention me, DM me. Obviously, check out our website at conversocial.com. Please do get in touch and continue the conversation.
Fantastic. Josh, thanks so much for joining me.
Perfect. Thank you so much.